Good evening, everybody. Donald Trump's trials and tribulations are far from over, but today, at least, those trials and tribulations are on hiatus. The former president also able to attend his son Barron Trump's graduation after all. Now, the 45th president is grateful, and I'm sure, but none of us should be grateful to the rabid Marxists who are overseeing his partisan show trial in Manhattan for being able to do things that every father should be able to do in a free America. But more importantly, for the sake of the country, President Trump will soon be back on the campaign trail, navigating back and forth between appearances before the many Marxist dim Stalinist courts and campaigning as the American people's presidential choice. These corrupt Marxist dim prosecutors and the judges are laying irrefutable evidence for absolute presidential immunity at the very feet of the U.S. Supreme Court. And only that immunity will free a president from the destructive forces that the Marxist Dems have unleashed against President Trump. And if those justices, for a moment, think they can finesse this immunity decision, they will be risking the republic, and only a strongly reasoned ruling in defense of the president will assure that these threats against President Trump are never again permitted against any president. These threats, by the way, are also aimed at the High Court itself, as they've probably noted. Biden's public ultimatums to the Supreme Court, to those justices, well, as the Marxist puppet tells them, they will either do or he will pack the court. Do as Biden says, or he will send more violent protesters to frighten the justices and their families with the intent to intimidate them, as he has before. Or, in Justice Kavanaugh's case, face certain peril from a gunman intent on killing him, family members as well, perhaps, before that gunman was arrested before he could harm them near Kavanaugh's home. Or the venal threats of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who told Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, telling them that they had unleashed their whirlwind for which they would pay the price. The evidence is clear that President Trump and any president deserves absolute immunity. And in President Trump's case, the need for that immunity is urgent. Our constitutional republic, in my view, won't survive the Marxist Dems and their all but total corruption of our federal government, what was once our federal government, and that of the state and local legal systems they've corrupted, and with which they have conspired to destroy President Trump and prevent what appears to be his more than likely re-election. And one of those politically corrupt Marxist conspirators is Manhattan prosecutor Alvin Bragg, who finally finds himself in the sights of the Oversight Committee for collusion with the Biden White House. Namely, the House committee is looking into former senior DOJ hatchet man Matthew Colangelo, who has been investigating the Trump organization at the Justice Department before swooping in to coordinate Bragg's political prosecution of President Trump, who just happens to be, Colangelo does, just happens to be Biden's, third-ranked man at the Justice Department. And in a bit of good news for the former president, a financial windfall of $1.8 billion worth of shares in Trump Media and Technology bestowed to him in an earn-out bonus, as it's known on Wall Street, boosting the president's fortune. Trump now has around 65% of the shares in Trump Media. Also expected to profit from the earn-out bonuses is former Congressman Devin Nunes, who is President Trump and Trump Media's chief executive officer and president, as well as a number of other executives who have stock payouts promised over the past. Trump's earn-out bonus brings his estimated net worth to around $3 billion. Trump's total shares in the media company worth about $4 billion on paper. And remember, all of these are estimates, and we should make that very clear. But those shares are subject to a 6-month lockout period in which the president is not allowed to trade the shares. And joining us now to talk about all of this Trump financial windfall, is the billionaire investor Scott Bessent, who's the founder of Key Square Capital Management. I want to start with, first of all, this deal that President Trump has, this, if you will, extraordinary boost in his net worth, and your thoughts, your reaction to it.
Look, it is it's nice to see President Trump actually making some money. They
Yeah.
off of being president. Most people come in with no money, leave with a lot. He came in with a lot, left with less, and
Yeah.
I think is we'll see what happens with the with the company, but is clearly has a big dedicated fan base, and um, it could be a substantial increase to his liquid net worth.
Right. I feel the same way. I'm obviously pro-Trump, but I think that most Americans right now who've seen this man get badgered and hounded and harassed and persecuted politically for 9 years right now, the money that it's cost him, to see him get some form of windfall is almost karmic. Because he has given up so much. He and his family have been targeted, they've sacrificed. It is, anyway, I think most Americans are squarely behind him and see this as I said, karmic and good for him. Uh,
Yeah,
so,
and Lou, if I have a minute, it is I like your word karmic, and what's been done to him reminds me of the richest man in Russia. There was a fellow named Mikhail Hodorkovsky, and when he announced that he was going to go into politics, he had an oil company called Yukos, and Putin arrested him, and he went from being worth $18 billion to, I think, when he got out of jail 9 years later, he had 100,000. He currently lives in Switzerland. So when the Leviathan comes for you, watch out.
yeah, especially the communist Marxist Leviathan and the cretins who make it up. We are in the grip of precisely those people right now. The person of uh, the puppet Joe Biden, his Marxist masters, many of the same oligarchs who, well, they would be called oligarchs frequently and regularly in the United States if they were anywhere but here. It's an extraordinary moment where we're seeing corporate chieftains ballyhooing the good of DEI, ESG, CRT, and without a blink, pushing what is a Marxist view and slogans, empty as they are. Uh, but importantly, they're establishing it, entrenching it in American culture, at least in the business community, but well beyond that. Your reaction to that?
Look, I think it's a deeply cynical move. And it's I think they look at it as a free form of advertising. Large athletic product company with a swoosh, and they I kind of kowtow to the Chinese government,
Yeah.
depending on the kind of labor they use to uh, make their products. I think the NBA refuses to talk about what goes on in China, but they shut down a coach or a manager who criticizes China. I think it's the movie industry that takes Taiwanese patches off of Top Gun jackets. And look, I think the American people understand what's going on. There have been some very good books. Vivek Ramaswamy has written about this, and it's deeply cynical.
It
And
is deep.
I think we're with what's going on in these college campuses. We're seeing the final point, and where this goes. And I think the American people don't like it, and I think that it's going to come back and likely bite Joe Biden and the Democrats in the butt in November.
Yeah, I think this redounds to the president's benefit. Certainly, he's way up in the polls. He is strong across those polls. But I think, as the American people are watching what is Marxism, it's the the academics like to call it cultural Marxism. It's Marxism, and it's in your face in these anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli, and anti-American demonstrations. It's and corporate America finds itself aligned with them because of the Marxism that is the foundation of each one of the DEI, the ESG, the various nonsensical, hollow terms that are just simply a form of is systemic. I'll put it that way: systemic reversal of every social progress that's been made for so many millions of Americans over the last 50 years. It is cynical and it is a shame. I want to
Yeah,
get.
and Lou, I could agree more. It's reductionist. It is, grouping people according to their beliefs, their skin color, their religion, and I just don't even know the what to say to this Marxism and the spillover into anti-Semitism that we're seeing. I mean, it is inconceivable that the things that are being said could be said about any other group, and students not being expelled, people not being arrested for hate crimes, and what's going on in these college campuses is shocking. And my message has been to my Jewish friends, I'm sorry this is happening to you. I hope it is not affecting your children. And this too will pass, but it is very unattractive. And I hope that this is a turning point in the country's history where we're not going to let this happen.
Yeah, this is, and I think it's a turning point, but it's going to be a turning point only if we actually make certain that we turn on this point. If we tolerate anti-Semitic nonsense and we, under the rubric of free speech, as so many of those Marxists want to claim, it's disgusting and it's rationalization. And I want to turn to something that to me is very important, and I think to the country. What we are seeing, and I want to get your view from your high perspective. I'm watching a lot of people, billionaires, highly successful corporate leaders, moving toward Trump now. And I don't know that that is a torrent yet, but I have seen that movement. I want to get your sense of, is there a coming together around the now seeming likelihood that President Trump will be elected in November? And is there a rapprochement, if you would, with the business community and this populist billionaire, but certainly conservative and patriotic American by the name of Donald Trump?
Yeah, so I would say, and I've been doing my part to get my friends, acquaintances in the financial world, in the business community, to understand there are just two candidates now, and it's Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And is you are voting for the future of the country, and under Donald Trump, everyone did well. Every income class did well.
Right.
The Trump tax cuts caused a demand shock. The Trump deregulation kept the demand shock from becoming inflation. It was a low inflationary growth period where the bottom 50% of income earners had real wage gains and the stock market went up. Under Joe Biden, you have a bifurcated economy, and only the top 20% is doing well, and only big companies are doing well. If you are in the bottom 50% of earners, you are being crushed. And the Philly Fed reported last week that delinquencies on credit cards are now at 3.5%. 3.5%, which is the highest that they've been since they started keeping the data series in 2012. So in Joe Biden's America, you either have assets or you have debt. If you have assets, you're doing great. And if you're a big company, you're doing great. If you have debt and you are a small business, you are getting crushed.
And getting crushed is exactly what's happening to the middle class of this country once again. The middle class, as you point out, benefiting with real wage gains for the first time in three decades under President Trump. And a lot of people are shocked to hear that because they thought, well, this couldn't be, that we wouldn't have had real wage gains for the middle class for so long a period, but that's precisely what we did. And to your point, he restored prosperity and income growth for every segment of our economy and our workforce. I want to conclude, if I may, by asking you about the direction of this economy, the way you see it, how concerned you are or not concerned. Give us a sense of, from your perspective as a highly successful investor, what you expect over the course of the next, let's say, 6 to 9 months in the economy.
I think that, all people, all successful people, big business, small business, who own their businesses as opposed to, or executives, are coming back just because they're concerned about what 4 more years would be like. And, that is a segue into what we're seeing here. Is I am quite concerned about this economy, is that it is a combination, I said, of, high asset prices, and we are now spending out of, asset prices. You have high asset prices, people are spending, due to stock market gains, housing market gains, crypto gains, high interest income because rates are very high. And, that is not good. And then on the other hand, for the trailing 100 days, we've been producing $1 trillion of new debt every 100 days. So, we've got a 7% for 2023. We had a 7% deficit. The spending's out of control. This looks like something out of an emerging market. Janet Yellen has moved the debt profile from longer-term debt right up to 90-day Treasury bills to try to keep long-term interest rates under control because, her administration and her Treasury, they don't want to issue long-term debt because they'll blow it out. It'll further hurt the housing market. So I think we are in a very unstable equilibrium where we are dependent on high asset prices, big deficit spending, and this looks more like an unstable emerging market than the world's greatest country with the deepest and richest capital markets.
Yeah, it does appear that right now we are in for a possibility of a disruption in the economy, whether one wants to call it a recession, whether one wants to call it stagflation, whatever the prospect is. There's a lot of ground to be covered if we're to have a positive outcome over the next 9 months to 1 year, in my view. I think we're in concurrence on that, and I appreciate you being with us. And come back soon. We'll talk more about economics, and we'll talk Trump economics, not this Biden economics. It's such a downer. Scott, thanks
exactly. I'd love to come back and what I talk. I don't speak for President Trump, but I'd love to come back and talk about what I think a second Trump term might look like.
That sounds good to me. And the sooner we get to that reality, the better we'll all be. Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you.
It's certainly no secret that these little Gazas sprouting up all over the nation under President Joe Biden are being financed by the rabid Marxist left and radical Islamists, a desperate get out the vote ploy for Biden, at least. A new report in the Daily Mail lays bare just one of the groups behind the criminal conspiracy to finance these jihadist rampages across our college campuses. Students for Justice in Palestine, or SJP, is a campus group with more than 250 chapters all across the country, one of the main organizers of these protests that have shut down Columbia University, shut down university after university. This is an explicitly pro-Hamas group that has received $3 million through radical Islamist groups connected to the Gaza-based terrorist organization that carried out the brutal massacre in Israel on October 7th, Hamas. And you and I might think this terrorist-linked criminal conspiracy against the American people would be investigated by the FBI, perhaps investigated by the Justice Department. But no, FBI Director Wray says they're not monitoring campus riots and threats against Jewish students, threats against those universities and their administrators, and threats against Israel. And yes, threats against America. But the DOJ and FBI, no, they're not going to investigate. They're not going to monitor. DOJ and the FBI saving their vast manpower and resources to prosecute the former president for alleged bookkeeping errors, minor ones, and misdemeanors, all in order that they and the puppet president and his masters can rig the next election, interfere with the next election. But there is some hope, as not everyone in New York City is an unpatriotic, American-hating commie, at least not yet. NYPD officers hoisted the stars and stripes above New York City, reclaiming a small piece of territory in the Marxist war against everything good and decent in America. They took down that Palestinian flag and threw it in the trash where it belongs. Thus ended a despicable chapter in the Intifada at City College. But the war against Marxist, radical Islamist degeneracy raged on in the streets of New York last night as the NYPD hauled in more than 4 dozen Columbia University students and who had taken over Hamilton Hall, built themselves a wall for crying out loud, and watched it all come to an overdue but striking and welcome end. And as the New York Police Department sent in a tank as a reality check for the lawless fools of the pro-Hamas persuasion and brought them in to be booked and arrested, Columbia has promised to expel those students. I prefer that their attendance at the college be expunged. No mention of them. That's it. No record of them ever again. And for any pro-Hamas students coordinating with Hamas-linked groups to be investigated thoroughly under the anti-terrorism statutes. The jihadist uprising on college campuses spinning out of control in a number of places and will do so almost everywhere if law and order is not established and right away. And that means harsh consequences have to be meted out. These are not children. They're 18, 19, 20 years old or more, and no more cheap talk. Here we see Penn Station in New York City overrun with these anti-Semitic protesters. At UCLA, on the other side of the country, roughly 100 pro-Israel vigilantes stormed the campus's Palestine Solidarity encampment late Tuesday night, sparking battles with activists, and Breitbart News reporting the incidents. The Daily Bruin, by the way, the student newspaper, reported that fireworks, tear gas, and fights broke out, escalated over the course of the night, and a young Jewish woman was beaten senseless by the increasingly violent pro-Hamas rioters. She was knocked unconscious, sent to the emergency room, and all of this because of the permission of these university administrators who are not demanding that those students obey the law, and for whom there have been no consequences to this point. These feckless leaders in the universities, like Joe Biden, or California Governor Gavin Newsom, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul, all in charge and all disgusting. One journalist who's captured this pro-Hamas chaos on our campuses firsthand is Anthony Cabasa. As he put it on X, quote, "What I witnessed tonight is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. Complete lawlessness, anarchy, bodies dragged away after scuffles, blood, mace after mace after mace spray, fires, explosives, and the list goes on. The school and the city failed the students tonight. Insanity." But well said. An independent journalist, Anthony Cabasa, joins us now to talk about the worsening threat to America, to Jewish students, and to Israel itself. Great to have you with us, Anthony. Give us a sense, straight up, what it's been like for you covering this extraordinary story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It has honestly been probably one of the most unreal nights of my short reporting life. I have been covering protests since 2017, anything from pro-Second Amendment to the pandemic to the Stop the Steal rallies out of DC. You name it, I've probably covered it. There's footage somewhere on an external hard drive that I can send your way. But last night was very different in the sense that, for so long with protests, it's usually the protesting side and then police presence. And so sometimes there's tensions that escalate. Obviously, we saw that during the Floyd riots, where there was a huge anti-cop, anti-law enforcement sentiment
Right.
by the protesters. And so we would see these clashes at federal buildings, police headquarters, precincts being burnt down, sometimes with police inside. But what I saw
And
last night is like nothing I've ever seen before, because law
how
enforcement
so?
was basically absent. Well, yeah. So the way it was different was there was no law enforcement present. There was school security that was hired by the police. I'm sorry, by the school, UCLA specifically, to basically keep like an outside barrier outside the pro-Palestine encampment that is, by the way, on public property. But as I'm sure the nation has seen videos surfacing of UCLA, students themselves that are paying tuition, including Jewish students, are not allowed inside of these encampments, including media that have not been allowed, whether it's local or independent journalists like myself. They just simply not been inside. So for 5 hours, right around 10 p.m. last night, all the way to about 5 a.m. this morning, there was really no police presence. It was a lack of leadership on the mayor. It was a lack of leadership on UCLA. I've never seen this level of violence between just two civilian groups, the pro-Palestine encampment and obviously the pro-Israeli counter protesters. So for hours, we just witnessed people bashing each other over the head, spraying each other. I mean, just if you can think of anything violent related, it happened last night. And all of this with security watching from just a couple feet away, saying that they have been ordered to stand down by UCLA, and police were just nowhere to be seen. They actually didn't get to the scene till about 2:30 in the morning. That is when they got there.
Yeah. That's the LAPD?
Yes, correct. That was the LAPD. There were early reports from the mayor, I think as early as 12:30 in the morning, that LAPD had been contacted, and that they were en route. But that was simply just not the case. I think she preemptively sent out that tweet, hoping that they would get there soon. But the LAPD didn't show up for over an hour later,
So,
after this tweet was sent out by the mayor. Go ahead.
well, that's a disgrace for Mayor Bass. That's a disgrace for the entire city of LA. But I think it's an even more proximate disgrace for the UCLA president, the board of trustees, for that entire administration. That's outrageous that they did not have people there to protect all of the students from violence. It's clear what they were doing. It's also clear that they ran from this. As we've seen, by the way, it's not just at UCLA, it's at one university after another, with some of the most ignorant administrators that one could imagine when it comes to protecting their university, to stopping this kind of nonsense before it gets started. Uh, give us a sense in your judgment as to what was required to stop that. I mean, simply a police presence, it seems, would have stopped it. Or was this going to be more violent no matter what?
No, you're absolutely right. I believe that if law enforcement were present, that definitely things would have not gotten as violent as they were last night. Obviously, we've seen images and video of what happened in USC, where they quickly were able to take down that encampment. Obviously, the difference is that USC is a private institution versus UCLA, which is public space, which is why, for whatever reason, the UCLA chancellor was maybe hoping that if they can just break bread with these so-called peaceful protesters, which have been anything but since they're initiating this encroachment on public space. But yeah, police had been, and here's the thing is that earlier, the reason why I made my way down there is because I received a report that the UCLA chancellor sent out an email that the encampment had finally been deemed unlawful, and that if they did not leave that space, meaning the pro-Palestine encampment folk, that they would be basically arrested or face suspension or even expulsion from the school. So I made my way over anticipating law enforcement. But that simply just was not the case. From what I understand, not sure why they thought it was a good idea. The UCLA chancellor actually wanted to negotiate a deal with the pro-Palestine encampment. I was able to get access into that private community of the encampment folk. They have an encrypted telegram that I had access to, and they were saying that they were they were going to go and negotiate with UCLA admin on how to peacefully come to terms, but basically giving into a list of demands. They had a list of demands for the
When I
UCLA chancellor.
When I said
Yep.
that the administration was ignorant, I meant they're ignorant. They have a whole history of protests and demonstrations in this country over the course of the past 60 years. There's no excuse for any administration not to have a plan for protests and demonstrations, and frankly, when the disorder and chaos breaks out, they should have a plan. They obviously didn't. So they're not protecting their students. The LAPD seems to be just flat footed. And by the way, one begins to suspect that your local politicos have an agenda in mind and that they're following it. I want to just ask you this. What percentage of those people, if you can have any sense of it, what percentage of those folks at the encampment demonstrating are from UCLA, and what are the number that are professional paid agitators and provocateurs?
That's actually a really good question. The several times that I've been to the UCLA campus, I've actually been able to talk with a lot of the students that have been turned away from the encampment. They have said that actually some of the quote unquote students, that allow people in, are not actually students. So they actually say, wait a minute, you're turning me away. I'm a student. I want to go here because I actually pay tuition. I'm looking at you and you're not a student here. Who are you? And they just say, oh, well, we are allies. And so what we've come to find out is that there is a lot of pro-communist propaganda inside of this encampment. And unfortunately, it looks like communist agitators, anarchist agitators are completely in control in this encampment, completely losing the plot of anything anti-war, anything anti-establishment. It's just pro-communist propaganda at this point. And there's communist logos everywhere. The hammer and sickle is spray painted and graffitied
Right.
onto the campus walls, into the floors. And last night, what I saw was a lot of the pro-Israel folk were actually Jewish students supported by their family that were present. And so a lot of them just kept asking the same question over and over again. How many of you are actually students? And the pro-Palestine encampment were not able to answer that question to say, I am actually a student here.
Well, Anthony, we're glad you're here to answer our questions, and we appreciate it. And I hope you'll chronicle this for us as we go forward. Let's hope for a peaceful resolution, but a resolution, because what we're witnessing now is weakness and cowardice on the part of university administrators across the country for the most part. Thanks so much, Anthony Cabasa. I'm pleased to bring you more developments now at MyPillow. MyPillow excited to bring you their latest bedding sale, the biggest bedding sale ever. Get the Giza Dream Bed Sheets for as low as $39.98. A set of pillowcases only $9.98. And my wife and I sleep on those Giza sheets. We love them. We think they're unbeatable, in fact, and we've been sleeping on MyPillow Giza sheets for years now. And you can rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. They also have blankets in a variety of sizes, colors, and styles like plush, waffle, and down for as low as $39.99. They even have blankets for your pets. And yes, our dogs have MyPillow beds, which they love. And they even have the dog blankets. 2 of our dogs are a little older, and they absolutely appreciate those beds and blankets. Get huge discounts now on duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, couch pillows, and so much more. So go to mypillow.com, use promo code Dobbs, you'll be glad you did, or call 800-977-9152 and get all of your shopping done now while quantities last. And remember, use promo code Dobbs. Great bargains, great quality, a great promo code. I'm sure you agree. And please join me for my podcast, The Great America Show, each and every day. January 6th protesters bearing the brunt of our politicized legal system, even those who never went inside the Capitol building, subjected to vicious harassment by the Biden regime, the corrupt DOJ, the prosecutors overcharging them, the judges over-sentencing them. William Sarsfield is one of those January 6 protesters. He never set foot in the Capitol building. He did, however, help a Capitol police officer to safety and to escape the chaos. It was the right thing for him to do, so William did it. And guess what? For his trouble, he's now facing up to 5 years in prison, a $250,000 fine. His trial is this month. And we invited William onto the show this evening to hear from him directly, and I'm pleased to say he joins us now. William, good to have you with us. I can't even imagine what this is like for you. You weren't in the Capitol, you didn't do anything, and here you are facing a huge fine, incarceration, and it's over 3 years since January 6th. Tell us your emotions right now.
It's emotionally draining all the way around, thinking that your government's coming for you.
So, William, I would just like to turn to the issue of now what happens and what are your attorneys telling you will happen? Because you seem to be caught up in what for many has been a meat grinder. Why has it taken so long to get to this point where you're going to trial? And why in the world would they bring the charges to begin with, in your judgment and that of your attorney?
I believe in my judgment. It's a narrative all the way around to hold on till the next election. There's a lot of nefarious actions going on with the prosecutors, with the public defenders, with good patriots of taking plea deals. There hasn't been one time I've got any kind of help from any religious, any local leaders, any kind of help at all that I'm trying to find for just the J6ers, the family that's supposedly the world's biggest insurrectionist, the worst thing that's ever happened to our capital. We're few and far between. They're not wanting us to talk to each other. It's a scary sight all the way around.
Well, it's a grand point. I mean, who knew each other and who was conspiring to do what? And, I never did see the Justice Department lay out a plan to take over the government. They never did, not in any quarter. And they were allowed to do it. The judges didn't question these prosecutors. They didn't in any way. And by the way, just so that you and I are clear about where this stands in my worldview, I think that these are the most ignorant, corrupt prosecutors, and FBI agents should be ashamed of themselves for what they have done to you guys. Those prosecutors should be ashamed till eternity for what they have done to so many of their fellow Americans. And these judges who over-sentenced, I mean, first of all, they should have been throwing these cases out of court instead of over-sentencing. And it goes on and on. I'm not in any way disputing that there were some people who were involved and engaged in violence and would have to bear the consequences of it. But for you pick the percentage, 80, 90% of them, to be treated like this in America, you're only going to trial now. Jake Lang hasn't, as far as I know, to this point, even had a trial date set. Others like both of you. I mean, this is awful, and there's no shame in it. You talked about who is standing up for you. Basically no one, and that's a scary, scary thought. It should be a scary thought for every American watching and listening to you tonight.
The only people that have really stepped the faithful and the Christians that are praying every night and every day. There's numerous accounts on X. There's numerous accounts on Telegram. Right. There's people across this country that are across the globe that are actually sending prayers to me and every one of us. There's 1,300, 1,400 of us that are being indicted. It's a travesty. It's an unprecedented deal that something like this has happened. And I don't think if we don't come together as we the people, I think we're all kind of looking for a miserable and a doomed future.
Yeah, if we don't have a leader Um, and I'm going to say it very specifically, President Donald Trump. He is this moment's Churchill. I truly believe that. He's the only man with the integrity and the brains, the vision, and the strength to lead this country through this. Uh, and we had better make certain we get him elected on November 5th, because otherwise we lose the republic. And we've come awfully close to this point in doing so, that when we see what has happened to you guys, it's a national shame and a national disgrace. And uh, thank you for your strength in going through it. And we'll be following you all the way through. And come back soon. Will you, William? If you want more proof that Joe Biden doesn't care one whit about the welfare of American citizens, just take a look at his new drug policy. Attorney General Merrick Garland fully supporting Drug Enforcement Administration reclassification of marijuana as a less dangerous drug. The DEA is a component of the Justice Department, of course, so Garland is flexing his power over it. But marijuana is not less dangerous, no matter what you think. In May of 2023, a study found an association between marijuana use and schizophrenia in men and women between 21 and 30 years of age. Last February, another major study found a connection between smoking marijuana and heightened risk of heart attack and stroke. Where is the less dangerous drug part? Well, leaders who care about their people don't encourage them to poison themselves. And even though this isn't quite legalization, this is what Biden is doing, because a drug populace is a passive and compliant population. It's all about control. And don't you think it's about another thing, but exactly that, and the power of government. Turning now to Biden's illegal alien invasion. The House Homeland Security Committee obtained new documents related to Biden's unconstitutional mass parole program for illegal aliens. That program takes would-be border crossers and instead has them fly into the country. God forbid they should walk. They even get work permits and shelter and so forth and so on. The documents show that most of the flights are headed to the red state of Florida. I'm sure that's just an accident, but some are also dropping off a few people in New York, Texas, Georgia, and elsewhere. But 80% of them are headed straight to Florida. The Biden administration fighting as hard as it can to keep these details on his war against America hidden from view. But the consequences are seen and felt everywhere. In Fresno, California, police have just arrested an illegal alien wanted for murder in Mexico. His name is David Antonio Hernandez Ventura, and he is just one of nearly 2 million so-called getaways who've crossed the border. 2 million. We know the number is something closer to 10 million. The last few years, the Border Patrol has encountered and turned back folks like Ventura, in the case of Ventura, on 3 separate occasions in 2021 alone. But he re-entered the United States without being detected last year, as if detecting him would have mattered. They don't do anything about it. So people like Ventura are able to repeatedly try illegal entry, and thanks to the same Mexican drug cartels that are pumping deadly drugs into our country, well, he keeps coming back. So there are currently, by the way, if you're wondering about the cartels, about 175,000 active drug cartel members in Mexico. That's a conservative estimate. And that makes the cartels Mexico's 5th largest employer. The cartels generate upwards of $6 billion a year. By the way, that number is just laughably low. Through extortion, kidnapping, theft, human trafficking. It's hard to say just how much fentanyl is pouring in from Mexico annually, because the number is changing, and frankly, not a lot of people want to ask the question of the drug cartel members. How much fentanyl are you shipping to the United States this week? That question is not asked very often by anyone. Indeed, the figure is rising all the time. Seizures of fentanyl demonstrate that. Seizures of fentanyl at the southern border almost 500% higher in 2023 compared to 2020. That's a lot of fentanyl. Border officials seized a whopping 27,000 pounds of fentanyl last year. But again, that's what they caught, and it is a conservative estimate. and an estimate at best. Just last week, law enforcement confiscated 10 million lethal doses of fentanyl from a Sinaloa drug cartel cell in California. Imagine that, 10 million lethal doses of fentanyl in one seizure. The Mexican drug cartels are well organized, well funded, and well armed. And by the way, people are scared to death of them. And they have a secret weapon. Besides fear, the Biden administration is on their side. And that is a big, big problem. Joining us now, Ben Berkman. He's host of Law and Order. Tonight, Ben is coming to us from New York, just outside a hotel near Times Square. Ben, great to see you. And what are you seeing?
Hey, Lou. So I'm at one of the hotels. This is the Row Hotel. I'll kind of turn the camera so you can get a better visual of the size of the hotel. It's got around 1,400 rooms. It used to be a hotel that you could use. You could stay here as a local tourist. I actually stayed here a few years ago when I was in college. It used to be one of the cheaper hotels. Now it's been taken over by Joe Biden, by the left, by the mayor, Adams here in New York, as one of the illegal migrant shelters. And we've got outside, basically, you've got all kinds of activity going on out here. You've got mostly Venezuelans out here, but they've basically self-segregated as well. So this is one of the spots where you've got a lot of drug dealing going on. You smell nothing but weed. You've got all the scooters and bicycles over here, a lot of them stolen. And it's just a generally kind of third world part of our the city now. And this is just one of the multiple hotels. They've also got a facility at the airport. I was talking to Port Authority when I flew to Romania this weekend, and they've got a place there holding 700 people. But this is the outcome of what's happening on our southern border. We've got the invitation coming up. You've got everything. So you've got some like over here. You've got a family with kids over here. And then you've got on the other side, you've got young men, but we're not doing any of the background checks. So you've got good people coming in, supposedly, but then you also have some of the MS-13 guys and some of these other guys coming through that want to commit crimes. And Joe Biden has basically opened the floodgates to all of them.
And providing money to the city of New York, at least a lot of federal taxpayer dollars going into New York just to support those folks you see on the street and those folks who are living in the shelter that was formerly known as the Row Hotel. It is a shelter, and it's costing taxpayers a bundle more than what you were spending when you were there in your younger days. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So actually, the estimate that I've heard is over 3 years, it's going to cost them $12 billion, the city of New York. That's why they're trying to get all that money from the federal government, your tax dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. Because without it, New York implodes. I mean, the city of New York, you talked about it being third world, which obviously it has become because of its crime rate, because of the poverty, because of folks on the streets. The street violence is insane there. But these cities, the city of New York, without those federal dollars right now would just be collapsing. And so it's going to be interesting to see where we go. But you're talking about drug deals. You're talking about people selling weed primarily. What are you seeing in terms of any other drugs on the street that, at least as you're watching it, you suspect that there are, whether it's meth or it's fentanyl, whatever the other drug?
It's everything. Yeah, it's everything. The DA, Bragg doesn't charge for the crimes anymore. So basically any small amounts of drugs, whether that's weed or cocaine or heroin or fentanyl, they basically, anything they can make money on. The weed is what you smell, but everything else is being sold as well. It's basically a criminal market that's been invited in because we have DAs that don't prosecute crimes anymore, and we have a federal government that doesn't seem to care either.
And you have a federal government and a White House that's in league with the Mexican drug cartels. There's sex trafficking across that border. It's wide open to the cartels. They're making money, whether it is illegal aliens they're smuggling or deadly drugs, as you point out. One of the things I notice about the street scenes around you, I don't see a cop anywhere. Is that just a moment? It must be just a changing of the guard. Surely there would be cops there.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I asked, there were a couple when I came here a couple months ago, and they one guy wants to talk to me. I'll talk to you in just a minute. Okay, this guy's trying to talk to me and he went away. They're not too happy that I'm here, just FYI. But there were some cops out here the first time I came a couple months ago, and I actually asked them, and I'm going to walk you down and show you this. All of these bikes, most of these, the electric bikes here, have been stolen or taken. You've got the scooters down here, and when I was talking to the cops, they said they actually come about once a month, pick up the bikes, especially the scooters that you see further down at the end there, that have no license plates that have been stolen. They pick them up, they take them away, and within a day or so, they're stolen again. So they basically have just given up on this. There's so much crime here. And ironically, Lou, this is the same city where they're prosecuting President Trump for absolutely nothing. So we're not prosecuting, the street crimes, but we're prosecuting, it's the weaponization of the justice system or the lack of policing. So it all goes back to the BLM movement, to the defunding the police, to this moral relativism and self-policing and community policing and all this other liberal garbage. But no, the moral of the story is no, there's no police out here. They've basically given up on it.
Eric Adams is just a fool of a mayor. I mean, he's under federal investigation. He was called out of the White House to learn that, and he headed back to New York City to see what he could do because he had been questioning the illegal immigration policies, in particular of Joe Biden. The next thing you know, he's under investigation, but now they've got everything apparently worked out between them, New York City and the White House, and they've got money flowing into the city. And by the way, we haven't heard a peep about illegal immigration, street crime,
right,
or the just cesspool that New York has become. It's
right.
It's raw, it's straight up in your face corruption. And by the way, the fact that we don't have even worse crime than we have right now in New York City is frankly, I'm astonished that it's going this well. But meanwhile, I'm watching those children on the streets. I mean, they are at the mercy of thousands and thousands of illegal aliens that no one knows, but we do know that a certain percentage of them are hardened criminals. And it's disgusting to see what is happening there. Give us your sense of where this is all leading.
Well, it's getting worse. It's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, it's really leading to 2024. We either live or die based on what happens in 2024. If President Trump is elected, we may be able to save the country. If Joe Biden steals it again, I'm worried that the country's dead. This is, at some point we hit that event horizon and you get sucked into the black hole. And I fear that we're getting awfully close to that. And as you mentioned, the kids, the amount of child trafficking. In fact, I knew a guy named Carlos who was actually working at that Row Hotel. And he said multiple times children were abused, children were neglected, and they were told inside the hotel, don't report it because we may lose our funding. So it's an absolute tragic scene. As you mentioned, the crime, it's surprising it's not worse than it is. The problem is a lot of the crime goes unreported or it goes unprosecuted. So they can come out and say, oh, crime's not that bad. But the crime in the city is bad. And a lot of times they don't connect it to where it's actually coming from. But bottom line is it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And what Ben is describing and what you are seeing in his report this evening is without question, this is the Marxist-Dem dream. And it is a nightmare for everyone else. But the Marxist-Dems, this is the stuff of their dreams and what they mean for all of America, not just New York City or the border. Ben Berkham, as always, great to have your reporting. And thanks so much. And as always, be safe, my friend. And before we go tonight, I want to talk about something really exciting. When Mike Lindell invented the original MyPillow, it had everything you could want in a pillow. Now, nearly 20 years later, Mike discovered a new technology that makes MyPillow even better. The MyPillow 2.0 has the patented adjustable fill of the original MyPillow, but now has fabric that is made with temperature-regulating thread. The MyPillow 2.0 is the softest, smoothest, and coolest pillow you'll ever own. Right now, MyPillow is offering a buy one, get one free on the MyPillow 2.0 when you go to mypillow.com, and please use promo code Dobbs or call 977-9152 and say goodbye to tossing and turning and flipping your pillow over during the night. Go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Dobbs. Join us here tomorrow, and until then, thanks for being with us. God bless you, and good night.
Mike Lindell here, and like you, I see our country being destroyed daily. We face massive economic issues, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are people in power who threaten the values that have made our country great. Well, I've been a believer in gold and silver for a long time, and I've searched for years for a partner that shares my values. Well, Genesis Gold